Okay, good morning and welcome to the September 2011 meeting of the Federal Communications Commission. Madam Secretary, would you please introduce our agenda for this morning?
Today's agenda includes one item for your consideration and one presentation. First, you will consider a notice of proposed rulemaking to accelerate the development and deployment of next-generation 911 technology to improve public safety by enabling the public to send texts, photos, videos, and data communications to 911 public safety answering points, or PSAPs, and enhancing the information available to PSAPs and first responders for assessing and responding to emergencies. Second, you will hear a presentation on the use of deployable aerial communications architecture to facilitate the ability of first responders to communicate with each other and consumers to reach first responders in the wake of natural and man-made disasters, even in situations where there is a severe damage to terrestrial communications infrastructure. The report will make recommendations regarding next steps the FCC should consider to promote the development and use of deployable aerial communications architecture. This is your agenda for today. All items on today's agenda will be presented by the Public Safety and Homeland Security Bureau. Rear Admiral Jamie Barnett, Chief of the Bureau, will give the introduction.
Admiral Barnett, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning to you and to the commissioners. The Public Safety and Homeland Security Bureau is pleased to be presenting all of the items on today's agenda. And I think it's particularly fitting that during this month, when we observe the 10th anniversary of the September 11th attacks, the Commission has chosen to focus squarely on public safety matters. In the first portion of today's meeting, we will be presenting two items relating to the Next Generation 911, a notice of proposed rulemaking and a Bureau cost study on Next Generation 911 network connectivity and call routing infrastructure. Following the Commission's vote on the notice, we'll present a Bureau white paper on the deployable aerial communications architecture, and we'll provide an overview of the public safety technology exhibit we currently have in the FCC's Technology Experience Center. Turning to the first item, we're pleased to present to you a notice of proposed rulemaking that seeks to accelerate the deployment of the Next Generation 911 applications that will enable consumers to send text, photo, video, and data to 911 call centers to benefit from the better information that begins synthesized with existing databases to enable them to assess and respond to emergencies more quickly and effectively. The ability to send text messages, photos, and video clips has become commonplace for users of mobile devices, yet our legacy circuit-switched 911 system does not support these forms of communication. Adding these non-voice capabilities to our 911 system will significantly improve emergency response, save lives, and reduce property damage. The notice of proposed rulemaking will also examine the issue of prioritizing 911 traffic to ensure that people in need of assistance have reliable access to emergency services, especially during times of major emergencies. The Bureau will also be presenting to you today a cost study on the network connectivity and call routing portion of the nationwide NG911 network. This cost study will guide the Commission in its Next Generation 911 policymaking and will serve as a resource for other federal policymakers as well as state and local governments and other stakeholders. Joining me here at the table are Deputy Bureau Chief David Firth and Patrick Donovan, Deputy Bureau Chief Jennifer Manner and Pat Amadeo from the Public Safety and Homeland Security Bureau, and Karen Pelt-Strauss, Deputy Chief of the Consumer and Governmental Affairs Bureau. Karen and her team's expertise on accessibility issues has been a tremendous asset to us, and we look forward to working with CGB throughout this proceeding. I'd also like to acknowledge the team in the Public Safety and Homeland Security Bureau that worked so diligently on the NPRM and the cost study. And I would certainly like to include Professor Henning Schulz-Rennie, Gene Filano, Tom Beers, David Seal, Tim May, Aaron Garza, Jerry Stanshine, Brian Hurley, and John Healy. And I certainly have to recognize that Amy Levine of the Chairman's Office has been a tremendous asset to us on this. I would also like to thank Chuck Needy from the Office of Strategic Planning and Policy Analysis. And I would also recognize the Office of General Counsel, the Wireline Competition Bureau, and the Wireless Bureau for their expertise and assistance on this. So on behalf of the Bureau, Patrick Donovan will present the notice of proposed rulemaking, And then Pat Amadeo, to my right, will present the cost study.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. The notice of proposed rulemaking before you today seeks to accelerate the development and deployment of next-generation 911 technology that will enable the public to send emergency communications to 911 call centers via text, photos, and video, and will allow 911 call centers to assess and respond to emergencies more quickly and effectively by incorporating better information from the scene of an incident that can be synthesized with existing databases. The notice examines potential methods for sending text messages to 911 that could be implemented in both the short term and the long term. The notice focuses on 3 broad classes of text-capable communications, namely SMS, IP-based messaging, and real-time text, and compares their characteristics, strengths, and limitations in supporting emergency communications. The notice also explores the potential for development of IP-based technologies and software applications that will deliver not only text, but also photos, video, and other data to 911 call centers. The notice examines the potential benefits of adding text and multimedia capability to 911 systems, as well as the costs of implementation. With respect to all of these alternatives, the notice explores the full range of options for the FCC, including both non-regulatory and regulatory approaches. In light of reports that some 911 calls were impeded by network congestion after the August 23rd East Coast hurricane and during Hurricane Irene, the notice also seeks comment on whether the Commission should prioritize 911 traffic to ensure that people in need of assistance have reliable access to emergency services, especially during large-scale natural and man-made disasters. The notice seeks comment on how best to address this concern in both the legacy networks and the emergency broadband networks that will support NG 911. The notice also seeks comment on how to ensure that as service providers enable their customers to send emergency communications via text and other media, PSAPs will be technically and operationally capable of handling the increased volume of traffic that may result. The notice asks whether PSAPs should demonstrate a threshold level of NG 911 technical capability as a precondition to carriers being obligated to deliver text or other media to PSAPs. The notice then asks whether this technical capability should be established at the state or regional level to encourage development of statewide or regional emergency networks. The notice also seeks comment on legal or regulatory barriers to NG 911 development and whether states should demonstrate that they have taken steps to eliminate such barriers. Because text to 911 and other NG 911 capabilities will not be simultaneously deployed nationwide, consumers may be uncertain where non-voice communication with 911 is available. To address this concern, the notice asks how best to educate consumers about the availability and limitations of text to 911 and other NG 911 solutions. In addition, to address situations where a consumer attempts to send a text to 911 in a location where text to 911 is not available, the notice asks whether the consumer should receive an automatic reply message with instructions on how to contact the PSAP, such as a message directing the consumer to place a 911 voice call instead. Finally, the notice recognizes that text to 911 and multimedia to 911 applications can not only achieve the public safety benefits identified in this proceeding, but could also address many of the accessibility goals of the 21st Century Communications and Video Accessibility Act of 2010, which requires the development of accessible 911 technologies for people with disabilities. The Emergency Access Advisory Committee is currently developing recommendations to meet this statutory objective. And in light of the overlapping issues, the notice asks whether the Commission should incorporate the committee's recommendations into this proceeding. Moreover, the notice seeks comment on how the Commission can most effectively expedite the deployment of NG 911 while simultaneously improving emergency access for people with disabilities. The Bureau recommends adoption of this item and requests editorial privileges. Before we submit the notice for your consideration, Pat Amadeo will present the Bureau's white paper, which contains a cost study on NG 911 connectivity costs.
Thank you, Patrick. Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. In this white paper, the FCC's Public Safety and Homeland Security Bureau presents a cost study on network connectivity and call routing portion of the nationwide NG 911 network. This paper will guide the Commission in its NG 911 policymaking, and it is offered as a resource for other federal policymakers, as well as state and local governments and other stakeholders. This paper examines two cost models for funding the construction and ongoing cost of nationwide NG 911 network connectivity and call routing between the public safety answering point, otherwise known as PSAP, and the commercial service provider. The model calculates both capital or non-recurring cost and ongoing or recurring cost under two cost models validated by experts, a baseline model and a second model that assumes the realization of certain cost efficiencies from PSAP consolidation and utilizing hosted as opposed to dedicated network models. The inputs for both models include the number of PSAPs in the United States, PSAP size, NG 911 bandwidth requirements, non-recurring or one-time equipment and installation cost, and recurring or ongoing cost, including operations and maintenance support. The cost study also assumes that each PSAP will provide NG 911 service using either of two network architecture solutions, dedicated or hosted. Under the hosted solutions shown in this example, a PSAP contracts with third-party service providers for all network services and associated equipment, which are hosted off-site and accessible by multiple PSAPs and other public safety entities. Costs are based on administrative and monthly fees. Since this approach permits the sharing of information technology and system administration resources, the hosted solution is likely to be more cost-effective than the dedicated solution. Under the dedicated solution shown in this example, the PSAP owns and operates all network, call routing, and call processing equipment and leases network connectivity. The dedicated solution requires additional capital expense and ongoing support than the hosted solution, including the cost of operations and maintenance personnel to support PSAP-specific NG 911 infrastructure. The baseline model assumes that a significant majority of small PSAPs will choose a hosted NG 911 solution. Half of medium-sized PSAPs will choose a hosted solution, and given the size and scope of PSAPs in major cities, all large PSAPs will select a dedicated solution. This baseline option also assumes that no PSAPs will consolidate operations as they transition to NG 911. For the baseline model mentioned above, the total 10-year cost, including non-recurring cost and recurring cost, is $2.68 billion. The figure depicts non-recurring costs for the three size categories, a total non-recurring cost of $1.23 billion, and the projected recurring cost of $1.45 billion. Finally, the cost-effective model assumes that PSAP consolidation will result in a 35% decrease in the number of PSAPs as networks migrate to NG 911. This model also assumes a greater reliance on hosted solution, with 50% of large PSAPs and 75% of medium PSAPs opting for a hosted solution. The total 10-year projected cost under this model, including non-recurring and recurring cost, is $1.44 billion. The figure depicts non-recurring costs for the three size categories, a total non-recurring cost of $556 million, and a projected recurring cost of $888 million. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, and I'd be happy to answer questions if you have any.
Thank you. It's been a busy month and a busy year for the Public Safety and Homeland Security Bureau, and we appreciate this work very much. Commissioner Cobbs?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for the presentations. Any meeting where we can vote for improved public safety communications is a good meeting in my book. In an agenda filled with lots of important matters, nothing trumps enhancing the safety of our citizens. So I appreciate the focus of this meeting on public safety. With this item today, we consider a short-term plan to enable texting to 911 and a longer-term route to include more advanced texting and pictures and videos. Longer term connotes no less priority, of course, and I know my colleagues will keep these both on the front burner. Consumers increasingly rely on, and many of them actually prefer, texting as a primary source of communication. Texting will become increasingly important as we harness the new tools of technology to the requirements of a safe and a secure nation. We saw again recently how quickly networks got overtaxed and congested. So we must do everything we can to encourage the utilization of new technologies to report emergencies and the aftermath of those emergencies. We have to get beyond thinking about critical communications as just traditional voice and realize that consumers don't make a lot of these distinctions among services and technologies that so often seem to fixate us and stymie us here in Washington. And especially don't they make them in a time of emergency when they're in trouble and need action fast. And indeed, today's consumers might rightly wonder, what's next generation about texting? In addition to responding to consumer expectations, texting is sometimes the only safe option in cases where making a call can mean risking a life. As for the disabilities communities, texting represents an enormous and a critical opportunity to protect life and property. These communities have been forced to wait on the sidelines of the communications game for far too long, so I'm pleased to see today's action and see it as part of our larger efforts to implement the landmark 21st Century Communications and Video Accessibility Act. We're not trying to identify a silver bullet here. Texting is neither a total response nor a perfect tool. The record so far points out that unlike phone calls, text can take precious more time to get to recipients, and importantly, they lack the automatic location information that accompanies calls to 911, and that is so important in responding to emergencies. PSAPs will need time and resources, considerable, to build in the capability to receive and process and respond to text. I would note that texting to 911 is apparently not new to this world and is actually on its way to becoming reality in other parts of the globe, including, I'm told, Estonia, Iceland, the United Kingdom. We have an opportunity then to look at their experience there and to evaluate their experience there, learn from what they did right, learn from what maybe they're not doing right, and apply that to our own public safety strategy making. So I am very pleased that this notice asks questions about that. As mentioned, we also look in this item to the longer term by asking how we can enhance 911 by making use of all the technologies that the Commission has worked so hard and the Chairman has worked so hard to encourage. With smartphones taking pictures and video everywhere around us, it would be irresponsible not to offer first responders all of these new tools to help them respond quickly and effectively to emergencies. We also ask if carriers should prioritize 911 calls over all other calls when networks get overwhelmed, something we saw during the recent East Coast earthquake. I look forward to hearing about the feasibility and the good that could come from prioritization. But we also have to remember that not all critical emergency communication is 911 bound, nor do we want a system that would have the unfortunate effect of preventing us from checking on our children, our parents, and other loved ones during a time of crisis. So I look forward to learning how we're going to balance these important priorities on the road ahead. Finally, I would note that there still lingers over all these initiatives to modern 911 a question about the proper role for us, the FCC. I, for one, believe job number one here is protecting the people. We need not and should not be timid about asserting our authority in this critical area. I always look forward to hearing stakeholder viewpoints. but I'm committed to the idea that we need to go beyond aspiration and beyond encouragement to doing everything we can to actually make this happen. Again, it's the lives and property of our citizens at stake. Today's notice explores the full range of issues, including how to educate consumers about the limitations of text to 911. And the more I get involved in these issues, the more I begin to understand the importance of consumer education and consumer outreach, and really telling people what's available and what the potentials and what the limitations of the tools are. If there are other questions that we should have asked and don't appear in this notice, and I think most of them are there, but you never know. So I hope if that's the case, commenters will queue them up and provide us responses to those too. And I'm optimistic we will find ways to address all of these concerns, particularly if we develop the kind of fulsome record that we really need. I want to salute our partners in the public safety community and the companies who have worked so hard on this, many of them here in the audience today. This is a public-private partnership activity, just like just about every important initiative we undertake. So I thank them. My thanks to the chairman for his continued leadership on public safety issues and bringing them to the attention of the commission and to the attention of the colleagues in the country. And to all of my colleagues for the concerns and the knowledge that they have consistently demonstrated. Particular thanks to the Admiral and his bureau and all of the other bureaus that worked so hard to make this a good item today. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Commissioner McDowell?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I want to incorporate by reference many of the remarks my eloquent colleague just said. Helping to ensure the safety of the American people is a core priority for government and this agency in particular. As our robust communications market continues to create innovations that are literally improving the human condition across the globe, the opportunity for new technology to help save lives has never been greater. Let me apologize for the raspy voice. It's allergy season again. Today we continue our noble endeavor of exploring paths to deploy next-generation technologies for emergency communications, what we are calling NG 911, although I suspect that term will become quaint before too long, thanks to technological advances. As we go forward, with our gaze fixed on the goal of modernizing this framework, we should take extra care to avoid tripping over pragmatic realities on the ground, such as limited legal authority, technical limitations, and unfunded mandates. Especially given today's economy, the Commission must be careful not to impose costly requirements on industry that would in turn require large taxpayer-financed investments by public safety or overhauls of existing emergency communication systems. As part of this proceeding, we should examine all potential costs. As we all recognize, today money is either unavailable or tightly managed. Therefore, I thank the staff for their vision in preparing the white paper on 911 costs. The document is detailed and thorough and you did a terrific job. I have no doubt that it will serve as a useful tool both internally and externally as we work together to grapple with these complex legal, economic, and technical issues. Furthermore, I'm pleased that today's notice contains questions about the Commission's legal authority. Ensuring clear and effective communications in times of emergency is a key aspect of the Commission's mission. At the same time, however, some providers of current and future application-based communication services are not FCC licensees and thus fall outside of the Commission's jurisdiction. Given the importance of this topic, however, I'm eager to hear all good faith legal arguments. In addition, we could all learn more about consumer expectations. The lessons learned from the deployment of wireless enhanced 911 will help guide us in our pursuit of a workable framework for NG 911 deployment. For instance, should the Commission require public safety entities to demonstrate a specified level of technical capability at the statewide or local level as a precondition to carriers delivering text or other media to them? What steps should be taken and when and by whom to educate consumers on the status of this work in progress, something that will always be probably a work in progress? I also appreciate the white paper on deployable aerial communications architecture in emergency situations. The recent trifecta of an earthquake, hurricane, and tropical storm hitting the East Coast has heightened the need for an in-depth analysis of potential communications solutions. So thank you for this excellent primer. Finally, in this instance, I support our decision to refrain from including draft rules at this point in the process. Usually I'm a proponent of including draft rules with notices of proposed rule making. As we remain at a preliminary stage, however, final proposals have yet to be developed. As I've noted, we must develop a strong record illustrating the costs and technical feasibility of implementing this technology. Accordingly, I approve of this prudent approach to develop the record further before drafting proposed rules. And many thanks again to everyone who's contributed today. I know this is just the tip of the iceberg, the first boat in your fleet, Admiral, right here. And I know there are many ships and sailors behind you, but also want to thank the chairman for making this a priority as well and helping to deliver this vision. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Clyburn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for this opportunity to once again follow my colleague. You know how much that means to me. This notice for proposed rulemaking takes a proper approach toward promoting the development and deployment of NG 911 technology. American ingenuity and investment in broadband IP networks and applications has already led to innovations that could greatly improve public safety communications. These innovations include M2M communications, such as environmental sensors, which can detect chemical spills, and gunshot sensors to improve law enforcement response to crimes. It is important that we do all we can to accelerate the ability of PSAPs to receive the most advanced multimedia services IP technology can provide. But, as this item explains, we must thoughtfully evaluate the challenges of that our nations will face as our emergency communication services attempt to leverage the advanced features of IP-based networks. PSAPs, like all other local government agencies, must carefully manage their budgets, and upgrading to IP networks can impose significant costs. Also complicating the matter is that there are over 6,800 PSAPs nationwide, and each has varying resources and timetables for improving their operational capacity or capability. The challenges PSAPs face become even more difficult during large-scale catastrophes. As the item explains, the August 25, 2011 East Coast earthquake and Hurricane Irene demonstrated that concentrated demands on the capacity of commercial communication networks hindered the ability of consumers to make voice calls. It is not realistic to expect all PSAPs to immediately manage the demand that come with handling the most advanced IP media, multimedia services, when many PSAPs are having trouble handling voice traffic during large-scale disasters. This notice balances the interests of advancing emergency communications by allowing PSAPs to manage their resources for their needs. It begins by charting a development path for 3 classes of text-capable communications: short message service, or MSS, IP-based messaging, and real-time text, or RTT. You know how we love our acronyms. We should establish the proper policies necessary to help more PSAPs receive and use text messages before asking them to take on the expense required to manage the more complex and advanced IP technologies too quickly. It is also reasonable to try to identify short-term and long-term goals in developing a national plan for transitioning PSAPs to NG 911 technologies. The cost model white paper should help the FCC measure the costs and benefits of any approach it considers to promote NG 911 technologies. I was particularly pleased to see that the item devotes so much attention to properly educating consumers about what types of communications PSAPs can receive. For those consumers who prefer to text an emergency message, it is critical that they know if the PSAP they are trying to contact can accept text messages. All stakeholders should take an approach that welcomes the most creative ideas on this issue. I applaud the staffs of the FCC and FEMA for releasing yesterday a consumer tip sheet to inform consumers of the current limitations of PSAPs to receive text messages and to provide other advice. When it comes to educating consumers that PSAPs may not be able to receive their emails or texts, It seems to me that commercial service providers and handset manufacturers will play particularly important roles. They interact most often with consumers, and they have considerable experience with measuring consumer expectation. Also, to the extent that part of the solution involves having service providers and handset manufacturers play a direct role in educating consumers, these entities know the most cost-effective manner for their entities to provide educational tools. I hope that commercial service providers will work with the public safety community and consumer advocates to help us craft the most effective campaign possible to educate consumers about the best ways to send emergency communications. I commend Chairman Janikowski, Admiral Barnett, and the staff of the Public Safety Homeland Security Bureau for exploring aerial communications platforms and other innovations to enhance emergency preparedness. Although we should continue to improve the reliability of legacy and broadband networks, we must also prepare for the reality that despite best efforts, networks will go out of service. Aerial platforms can provide rapid response solutions to temporarily restore critical communications. The military has successfully used a number of area solutions that are deployable within the first 12 to 18 hours of a disaster. I understand that there may be technical and coordination issues when using these various solutions with commercial networks, but I hope the relevant stakeholders can help us address these issues and arrive at a workable solution. The FCC is also showing leadership by holding a technology demonstration to draw attention to the latest innovations for providing emergency communications. Welcome to all of those entities who are taking part in this demonstration. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. It is less than 2 weeks after the 10th anniversary of 9/11, less than a month after a rare East Coast earthquake, and after Hurricane Irene caused major flooding and serious damage. These events remind us of the vital importance of our mission to harness the power of communications technology to enhance public safety and save lives, and of the need to ensure that our emergency response systems keep pace with how people communicate. Public safety is a priority of every member of this commission. It's been a focus of mine since my first day as chairman, when I instructed the Public Safety and Homeland Security Bureau to conduct a thorough review of the agent's preparedness for emergencies, which followed by a few days the happy news that Admiral Barnett would agree to come to the agency and head up the Bureau. Since then, working together, all of us, we've advanced our public safety agenda on multiple fronts, and I'm proud of our accomplishments. But there is still work to be done. With input from the public safety community, our federal partners, and other stakeholders, we have worked to establish an interoperability framework for a nationwide public safety broadband network. The future of that important network is in the hands of Congress, including authorizing voluntary incentive auctions to fund the public safety network. I'm hopeful that Congress will act. I'm also concerned about further delay. Every day that passes risks not only the economic benefits of incentive auctions, it also delays the substantial public safety benefits of the public safety network and increases the costs of building the network. An interoperable mobile broadband network for first responders is necessary to harness communications technology for public safety. Necessary but not sufficient. And so we've pursued and continue to pursue multiple initiatives. Working with FEMA, local public safety authorities, and the wireless industry, we're launching on an accelerated basis the Personal Localized Alerting Network. In the event of an emergency, PLAN allows government officials to send text-like targeted alerts to all enabled mobile devices in a geographic area. In just a few months, PLAN will go live in New York City, and it will launch nationwide in April of 2012. We've worked with industry to develop best practices to improve the reliability of our communications networks, and we've developed our outage reporting systems to provide situational awareness about communications outages in emergencies. To ensure that our networks keep pace with technological change, We've launched proceedings to consider additional steps to ensure network reliability, including whether to expand outage reporting to the broadband networks that the public increasingly relies on. We have stepped up our support of restoration efforts in the wake of disasters. In January 2010, we sent FCC personnel to Haiti to help with on-the-ground assessment of communications infrastructure. And since the Japan earthquake in March, we've been working with our colleagues in Japan both to provide assistance and to learn lessons for the future here at home. Hurricane Irene once again proved the value of our roll call technology units that can provide vital situational awareness of wireless transmissions from mobile to broadcast during times of disaster. We continue to explore new and innovative ways to use communications technology to assist in disaster recovery efforts. Today's report from the Public Safety and Homeland Security Bureau, which we'll hear in a minute, on deployable aerial communications is a promising example of such innovation. We've increased our outreach and public education efforts to help the public understand how they can use communications technology to prepare for and respond to disasters, even as use of communications technologies changes. Yesterday, we joined with FEMA to release a joint tip sheet with recommendations for how consumers can best communicate with public safety and family during and after disasters. We'll work with other governmental entities as well as the private sector to maximize consumer awareness of these tips and advice. Which brings us to 911, a cornerstone of our public safety communications infrastructure. Last month, I was pleased to announce a 5-step plan for accelerating the deployment of Next Generation 911. Now, Next Generation 911, as you've heard, is the emergency response system that will run on the broadband networks of the 21st century. NG 911 will add incredible value to our 911 system and all the people who rely on it. The plan lays out a comprehensive and coordinated strategy, the one we need to avoid patchwork deployment and years of delay in developing NG 911. The 5 steps are: develop location accuracy mechanisms for NG 911, enable consumers to send text, photos, and videos to PSAPs, to 911 operator centers, develop an NG 911 cost effectiveness model, facilitate the completion and implementation of NG 911 technical standards, and develop an NG 911 governance framework. We are implementing this plan. In July, we launched the first step with our order and further notice on location accuracy, which sought to close the accuracy gap between mobile and landline 911 calls and to lay the groundwork for location accuracy in next-gen 911 networks and applications. With the NPRM we consider today, we're moving on the second step of our action plan to enable consumers to send text, photos, and videos to PSAPs. Our action today rests on 2 basic concepts. The first is that in an emergency, consumers should be able to reach out for help with whatever means of communications they are accustomed to using. When I visited DC's 911 call center on September 9th, I asked Director Jennifer Green about the challenges she faced. She told me that her biggest concern is, and I remember this quote, keeping up with how the community communicates. For an increasing number of wireless users, that means texting 911, and so we move forward today to accelerate the ability to send text to 911. Texting is, of course, also important for people who are deaf or hard of hearing, who are discarding their TTYs and turning with increasing frequency to more advanced, but widely available methods of communications like smartphones. And we shouldn't stop at texting. It's, of course, increasingly commonplace to take photos or videos on a mobile phone. People should be able to send that information to 911. It surprises people to discover that we aren't already able to do that. Today, as I mentioned, if a mobile phone user attempts to send a simple text to 911, it goes nowhere. That's what happened to the students at Virginia Tech who texted 911 during the terrible shooting several years ago. An earlier tragedy, the carjacking and murder of Jennifer Kuhn in New York, was significant in spurring the initial focus on NG 911 and is worth recalling. During the incident, Jennifer Kuhn was able to call 911 from her car phone, but couldn't speak for fear of alerting her attacker. The PSAP kept the line open in the hopes that the caller would say something, but she never did, and tragically was found dead 2 hours later. The ability to text 911 might have saved her life. We've been urging the communications and technology communities to develop ways to implement next-generation 911 quickly and cost-effectively. And it's encouraging that even as the 911 community works on long-term implementation of NG 911, many vendors, service providers, and PSAPs are actively exploring and conducting trials of various near-term text-to-911 methodologies. This technology could provide for text-to-911 implementation within a year and at lower costs than previously imagined. In today's notice, we're seeking comment on these trials and initiatives, including innovative proposals like one from Neustar, which I had the opportunity to see firsthand last week, one from Intrado, the recently initiated SMS to 911 trial in Durham, North Carolina, and the Addis Interim Non-Voice Emergency Services Initiative. This is the time to focus on innovation, on problem solving, on developing these to the point where they can be executed affordably soon. I urge all companies, nonprofits, and research institutions in this area to develop by the end of this calendar year concrete proposals to accelerate deployment of text to 911 applications. We would like testing and test data so that we can move quickly on this national challenge. While accelerated text to 911 methodologies may not provide all the functionality of a fully realized NG 911 system, they could yield significant public safety benefits in the near term while work on longer term initiatives continues. The FCC will do its part to consider all alternatives and move forward quickly. In addition to empowering people to communicate with 911 in all the ways they're used to communicating, the second concept underlying our action today is to make sure that NextGen 911 gives first responders critical tools they need to manage a wide range of information during an emergency through 21st century emergency command technology that's based on broadband infrastructure and applications. How might this work? Imagine a crane collapse that blocks a major city thoroughfare, causing injuries to drivers and pedestrians and structural damage to nearby buildings and utilities. With NG 911 technology, first responders and PSAPs would have access to texts, photos, and videos sent from the scene and could combine, integrate that information with information from traffic cameras, automated sensors, databases with maps or building plans, and other sources. This would allow faster and more efficient assessment of the scope of the emergency, the amount and severity of injuries and property damage, and the impact on surrounding traffic and buildings. Using this real-time information, emergency managers would be able to decide how to optimize the deployment of police, fire, and emergency medical personnel, identify the need for special equipment, determine the fastest routes for first responders to and from the scene, and decide whether to send alerts or evacuation notices to people in the area. A few years ago, this technology may have sounded like science fiction, but today it's increasingly available for commercial purposes. Innovators are developing these technologies now for first responders, from integration of complex databases, mapping, gunshot sensors, and other sensors. And the fundamental goal of today's notice is to accelerate the development and deployment of these technologies as part of our emergency response communications infrastructure. I'm pleased that today in our new Technology Experience Center, we'll be showing demonstrations of NG 911, other public safety related technologies, and of what I've just tried to describe. Let me mention one more important topic in today's notice, a matter highlighted by our recent earthquake. Some wireless networks experienced congestion immediately following the earthquake, which prevented some 911 calls from going through. Unless we address this head-on, emergency events that result in a surge of mobile calls risk a level of congestion that can effectively block access to 911 for mobile devices during the period of congestion. That's why today's notice considers the question of whether and how to prioritize 911 calls on both existing and next-generation mobile networks. Some of the initiatives we're addressing, including 911 prioritization and enabling texting to 911, would increase the demands on our PSAPs, on our 911 call centers. In today's notice, we seek comments on ways that technology could provide a solution. In many areas, innovators and researchers are tackling the challenges of digital information overload. I call on our universities and the technology industry to help develop cost-effective tools and processes to enable PSAPs and our first responders to better manage the flow of multiple NG 911 related information streams. I've also directed our Public Safety and Homeland Security Bureau to coordinate with the Department of Defense to determine whether technologies used for situational awareness on battlefields could have application for our first responders in the event of emergencies. Finally, even as we seek ways to reduce the cost of NG 911 development and deployment, it's inevitable that upgrades to our 911 system will require funding. While the FCC is not a grant-making institution, we can provide policymakers with information about the costs associated with deploying the network infrastructure required to link PSAPs and carriers. That's why we're initiating today the third step of our 5-step plan to develop a cost-effectiveness model with the cost study that the Public Safety and Homeland Security Bureau has presented today, and thank you for that. This important study will inform states, localities, and the federal government about the cost implications of design choices as they plan their NG 911 networks. While we've now taken action to implement the first 3 steps of our NG 911 plan, we will also be initiating the remaining steps, establishing technical standards and governance by working with our local, state, and federal partners, public safety and commercial and other stakeholders, and through agency action. It's a lot of work to do. You can see how all of us take this seriously. I want to acknowledge the presence today of several leaders in this effort who have worked closely with us and who have worked on these issues for many years to make NextGen 911 a reality. Greg Riddle, the president of APCO, and Brian Font, CEO of National Emergency Number Association, or NENA. Greg and Brian and others who are here, we appreciate your commitment to this issue and your long and hard work. This is a vitally important national challenge. I encourage broad, ongoing engagement as we move forward together to make progress on this. I want to thank each of my colleagues. I think you heard clearly from everyone's statements that this is a strong priority and focus of all of us. And we want to do everything that this agency can to harness communications technology for public safety. I want to thank the staff of the Public Safety Homeland Security Bureau. Again, it has been not only a round-the-clock month, but a round-the-clock year. You're all doing tremendous work on these challenging, very important issues. I want to acknowledge also that today's notice and the other work that we're doing is cross-agency. We have Karen Pelt-Strauss here from the Consumer Bureau. The Wireless Bureau was active in this. Austin Schlick from the General Counsel's Office. Like so much of what we do, virtually everything that we do, we can't succeed effectively without strong interagency cooperation and mutual respect, and that's what we have here again today. So thank you very much for that, and let us proceed to a vote. All in favor of the NPRM say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. So ordered, and the request for editorial privileges is granted. Thank you, and Madam Secretary, please announce our next item. I think some of you are staying.
Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, next on your agenda is a presentation on the use of deployable aerial communications architecture to facilitate the ability of first responders to communicate with each other and consumers to reach first responders in the wake of natural and man-made disasters.
Terrific. Admiral, please.
Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, and if I have one editorial comment, you've said some very nice things about the Public Safety and Homeland Security Bureau, and I agree with you. They've done a great job, but I also greatly appreciate the leadership of the Chairman's office and the emphasis and leadership of each of the Commissioners, which has made all this possible. It makes our work so much better and easier and a joy. I'd now like to introduce the Bureau's white paper on the deployable aerial communications architecture. A major goal and indeed a responsibility of the Commission is to ensure that reliable communications are available throughout the United States, including to first responders on both a day-to-day basis and on an emergency basis. However, communications capabilities are often limited during and immediately after disasters when the terrestrial communications infrastructure may be severely damaged or unavailable for a period of time. To gain insight into potential technological solutions to this issue, the Bureau issued in early 2011 a public notice soliciting comment on the availability of deployable aerial communications architecture to provide communications when the terrestrial communications infrastructure is in fact severely damaged or otherwise unavailable. The white paper addresses how this DACA, as we call it, the acronym, could be implemented and used. It summarizes the comments we've received on the issue and provides recommendations on next steps. Associate Bureau Chief Richard Lee and Deputy Bureau Chief Jennifer Manner, both of whom have been great thought leaders on this, will present for the Bureau. But I'd also like to thank Pat Amadea, who you just saw, Jason Kim to my left here, Brian Hurley, and Kim Anderson for their work on this paper.
Thank you, Jamie. Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, good morning. I'm pleased to introduce the Public Safety and Homeland Security Bureau's white paper, The Role of Deployable Aerial Communications Architecture in Emergency Communications and Recommended Next Steps. Since 2005, FCC staff from the Public Safety and Homeland Security Bureau and the Enforcement Bureau have deployed to 15 natural disasters involving hurricanes, tropical storms, fires, and floods to assist with the communications restoration effort. We also deployed to Haiti, along with staff from the International Bureau and the Office of Engineering and Technology, to assist with the communications restoration following the devastating 2010 earthquake. One critical lesson learned from these deployments is the importance of quickly identifying damaged communication systems. Another critical lesson learned from these events is the importance of communications for managing and coordinating emergency response, maintaining the rule of law, and keeping the public safe and fully informed. The geographic features of the United States make it vulnerable to a varied range of potentially devastating natural phenomena, including major hurricanes, floods, fires, and catastrophic earthquakes. Catastrophic events like these will complicate even the most prepared response effort. In disasters this severe, it is all but certain that terrestrial communications facilities would be severely damaged and subject to significant communications outages. We have a next slide come up. Thank you. Today, with this white paper, the Public Safety and Homeland Security Bureau presents a deployable aerial communications architecture, or DECA, concept for restoring critical communications during a catastrophic disaster. The DECA concept involves an aerial capability that is deployable within the first 12 to 18 hours after a catastrophic event to temporarily restore critical communications, including broadband, for the period of 72 to 96 hours or longer. This capability would be useful in situations where the power grid may be inoperable, where access roads and bridges may be impassable, preventing communications repair crews and fuel suppliers for generators from entering the area. If DECA systems were available, users on the ground could continue to rely on their day-to-day communications devices in a transparent manner. DECA could potentially improve emergency response dramatically in disaster situations. Now, this concludes my portion of the presentation, and Jennifer will continue.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. Next slide, please. Next slide, thank you. In February 2011, the Bureau issued a public notice asking for input on the role of deployable aerial communications infrastructure. This public notice, with input from approximately 20 parties, accomplished the following. First, it identified promising DACA technologies, including small unmanned aerial balloon vehicles, weather balloons, high-altitude, long-distance unmanned vehicles, and deployable suitcase systems. It also highlighted the benefits of deployable aerial communications architecture, and finally, it raised interference and other concerns that require further examination. Next slide, please. Because of the benefits of DACA technology and the issues raised in response to the public notice, we believe it makes sense to move forward with exploring the potential use of this technology. Accordingly, we make the following recommendations to the Commission. First, to initiate by year-end a notice of inquiry to address FCC-related issues, including the role of DACA solutions during disasters, radio interference issues, spectrum coordination issues, authorization requirements, cost effectiveness, and operational procedures. Second, to host a workshop on deployable aerial communications architecture solutions and outstanding issues by year-end. 3, to share the findings with FEMA, the Federal Aviation Administration, and other federal partners and discuss next steps for possible pilot programs and implementation. And 4, working with the Department of State and other appropriate federal agencies, determine which issues have international ramifications. We're available to answer any questions you may have. Thank you very much. Jamie?
Well, thank you. Commissioner Cobbs, do you have any comments?
Yeah, just a few words. I'm, of course, pleased that on the heels of the Next Generation 911 notice of proposed rulemaking comes this white paper and presentation and good recommendations, I think, on the promising technologies that exemplifies the kind of creative thinking that we really need to make sure public safety always has. Deployable aerial communications architecture is quite a mouthful, but the idea and the goals seem fairly straightforward, and it's clear that having this kind of system available could contribute significantly in a disaster scenario and to the overall enhancement of our public safety networks. So it's appropriate that we take a good hard look at this. I would enthusiastically welcome a notice of proposed rulemaking. I am eager to learn more about the feasibility and the benefits of this technology, along with the experience of the military, which somebody mentioned, and other countries that may be a bit farther down the road in developing this. I also welcome a full discussion of what our carriers are already doing to help our first responders through things like mobile cell sites. We have already heard that interference may be an issue, so I look forward to hearing more about that and other specific concerns and what we might do to address them. And of course, we have to understand the costs and the trade-offs that always seem to present themselves whenever public safety opportunities are on the table. It does strike me that this effort presents yet another opportunity, not just for working together with other agencies like FEMA and the FAA and DOD, but also for public-private partnerships. This would be a major initiative to get this up and running. It's a big deal, and such challenges are best handled, as our history proves time and again, by the private and the public sectors working in tandem. So I'm pleased we're going to get the ball rolling with a workshop next month, I think you said, and to discuss the potential of this technology. You know, images of repeaters dangling from balloons and small planes operating as cell towers and suitcase deployments sound like something out of a science fiction or a spy novel, but it really can be a reality. But for it to become a reality, we need to begin the discussion now. So thank you again, Admiral Barnett and the fine staff of the Public Safety Bureau, for your hard work on behalf of the Commission and the American people, and thanks to the chairman and my colleagues for all the great follow-up work we're going to do on it.
Thank you. Commissioner Dowell?
Thank you. Just very briefly, thank you for this excellent work. Some of these technologies have been around for a while, and it's good to remind folks of them and take it to the next step. I hope our friends in the media over here are going to write about this. If nothing else, there's a lot of cool stuff to write about here. So as Commissioner Cobbs was talking about, so whether it's suitcase technology or high-altitude vehicles or unmanned vehicles, or who knows what. There's a great deal of potential here, and of course, for more seriously, there are a lot of issues to iron out, international concerns, as you pointed out, harmful interference concerns, and then at what point do public safety officials make the decision to launch these things, and standards for that as well. So my hat's off to you for putting this out and raising the profile of it, and I hope we can further the cause here and again help improve the human condition as a result.
Thank you. Commissioner Clyburn?
I thank you again for another opportunity. I sort of included, I had what I would think is an omnibus statement that included our affirmation and the direction in which we're headed, and to look forward to, as we all are, a better coordination between the agencies, using our best efforts and our individual strengths to get at the solutions we need to serve the public interest. So again, want to commend you on taking leadership on that, rightfully so, the right people to do the job, and to working with our, I like to say, sister agencies to again best serve the American public. So thank you very much.
Thank you. I'd like to add my thanks. The pace of technological innovation in the communications sector is as fast as anything that we've seen. And the challenge that creates is what risks to be a gap between the capabilities of communications technology and what our public safety communications infrastructure actually delivers. And we have to do what you're helping do today, which is do everything we can to close that gap. It is a challenge. It's a challenge because of cost trade-offs. It's a challenge because of executional implementation. But you've outlined in the earlier notice and in this presentation what our vision needs to be, and you're focused, as we all are, on what are the practical steps to get from here to there. Who are the partners in the public sector and the private sector? How do we make sure this happens? What can we learn from our military? What can we learn from other countries? And let's make sure that we lead the world in harnessing communications technology to prepare for and respond to disasters. So this has been a very important set of presentations today. I know it's sort of I think Commissioner Copps used this phrase, the tip of the iceberg. I think he used it in terms of the team, but it's the tip of the iceberg in terms of the work that you're doing. And I know you're going to get back to work right after this meeting and continue to push forward this big and very important public safety agenda. So thank you for that. With that, you all are excused. Let me ask my colleagues if there are any announcements, personnel or otherwise. None? Yes, please.
So it's fall law clerk season again. So we have 3 law clerks joining our sweatshop. I mean my office, and 2 are here today. Kathleen Slattery. Kathleen, you want to stand up so everyone can see you? Kathleen currently is at Catholic University in law school, where she is writing for the ComLaw Conspectus, Journal of Communications Law and Policy, the renowned communications law journal from Catholic University. She also has her undergrad degree from Loyola University of Baltimore, with many, many academic honors and such, and awards. She has studied in Italy. She has a rich experience with law firms, judicial clerkships, and whatnot. Is very involved in charity. Speaks Italian and the original Italian known as Latin. So her qualifications, of course, make her e pluribus unum. So thank you. We look forward to working with you, Kathleen. And we have David John Baker. David's also at Catholic University, where he's on the Catholic University Law Review, different publication from the ComLaw Conspectus. He comes to us from Belfast, where he has both a master's and a bachelor's from the Queen's University in Belfast, although he's a real bipartisan guy because he has strong ties to Belfast and to Dublin. So we're going to learn a lot more about that. He is no stranger to the FCC, having worked here earlier in the Wireline Competition Bureau earlier this year, and also many other great things in his resume, but including the Hudson Institute's Center for Global Prosperity. Who can be against that? So welcome. And then we also, she's in absentia, but hopefully we'll get her here. She's in class right now. Emily Bronner, but we will hopefully get her here at the next meeting so I can introduce her then.
Thank you and welcome to each of you. Commissioner Clyburn?
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. Because of their schedules, I would like to introduce all of my clerks for the fall session, though two you will meet in person in a few. Lori Stock is in her first year at George Washington Law School. She's a Thurgood Marshall Scholar and an editor of the American Intellectual Property Association's Quarterly Journal. Catherine Marin is a third-year student at George Washington Law School, where she is editor-in-chief of the law school student-run newspaper. She's not able to join us today because she's out of the country attending an International League of Competition Law Annual Congress and Conference in Oxford. That's where she is. But with us today is Elena Intrieri, who's a third-year student at Georgetown University Law Center. If you would stand, please. We have a very modest crew. She's a member of the school's Journal on Poverty, Law, and Policy. Welcome. And Douglas, we call him Drew, Zvoa. I might be right with that. If you could stand up. He's a third-year student at Catholic University's Columbus School of Law. He's an officer in the college's chapter of Alpha Delta Phi Legal Fraternity, and is a member of the law school's, and I quote, poorly performing rugby team. Well, thank you so very much and welcome. We have a fine crew this session.
Thank you, and welcome to each of you, too. We're very pleased to have all of you at the FCC. Admiral Burnett, did you have one other?
That we wanted to raise to the commission, just to provide a quick overview of, and I think it's appropriate after all the things that we've talked about today. In essence, cool stuff that we have here at the commission today, but cool stuff that saves lives. So it's an overview of the public safety technology exhibit that we currently have here at the FCC Technology Center. We have over 25 vendors who are exhibiting their equipment here inside and outside the commission. Showcases a range of technologies from 911 services to deployable aerial communications architecture to broadband services for public safety and more. We'd like to thank those exhibitors. They've gone to a lot of trouble to bring their equipment here. I'd also like to thank Robert Naylor, the FCC CIO, Gene Filano, Ron Cunningham, Marlene Dortch, Brian Upham, and Jennifer Manor for their work. And then, of course, Jason Kim at my left here will provide a short presentation on that.
Thank you, Edward. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Today, the Commission voted an item and was briefed on a staff white paper that contemplate how new and advanced technologies can allow us to better equip and protect our nation's first responders, homeland security and disaster response professionals, and the public we all serve. Mr. Chairman, earlier this summer, you cut the ribbon to the Commission's Technology Experience Center. The concept behind the center is simple: provide an opportunity for Commission staff and others to see and touch the technologies they facilitate through their work. This month, in recognition of Emergency Preparedness Month, the staffs of the Public Safety and Homeland Security Bureau and the Office of the Managing Director, with the cooperation of equipment manufacturers and service providers, both big and small, have assembled a broad sample of the latest technologies currently used by or soon to be deployed in public safety and emergency response. Today, we have expanded this showcase to include large-scale exhibits that are located in front of 12th Street, Main Street, and in our main lobby. While this list is not exhaustive and the exhibits are rotating throughout the month, currently available for review are Advanced Command and Control Solutions, an example of deployable aerial communications architecture, and innovative prototype communications technologies developed by National Institute of Justice funded researchers and intended to address public safety communication needs. Outside the building, the following demonstrations are available today only: in-vehicle public safety capabilities for consumers, mobile public safety broadband technologies for first responders, mobile security and surveillance technologies, a mobile-mounted virtual private network, and a demonstration of FCC roll call capabilities. The technologies on display this month only scratch the surface of the tools that are available, but they stand as an example of the creativity and commitment of engineers, software developers, and technologists in bringing new ideas into the day-to-day routine of our public safety and homeland security professionals. We invite you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Copps, Commissioner McDowell, Commissioner Clyburn, to visit the center and the exhibits outside to see firsthand a small representation of the promise that innovation holds for the protection and safety of all Americans. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Jason, thank you, and thank you for your work, all of you, in helping organize this presentation at our Technology Experience Center today and in multiple locations at the same time. I'm so proud of what the tech is doing. We wanted to make sure that all staff at this agency had the ability to have hands-on interaction with modern communications technologies that are necessary to inform smart policy making. The center is open to staff from other agencies, to Congress, and to others. This particular presentation is an excellent one. I've seen a number of these technologies already, and I'm looking forward to seeing more. And so I encourage everyone at the agency and everyone beyond to come and take a look. It's an example of what we're doing at the Tech Center. On a regular basis, the Tech Center is showcasing different areas of innovation around communications technology. All of this month is public safety. I'm not sure what next month is, but I'm sure it's on our website, and we'll continue to make available to our staff and others the ability to have hands-on experience with cutting-edge communications technologies. Let me make two announcements. One, I'm very pleased to welcome David Robbins, our new managing director. David was announced earlier this month, but this is his first commission meeting. Among David's many, many responsibilities is oversight of the Technology Experience Center through Robert Naylor and others. David, the position you have as managing director is one of the most important positions at the agency, essential to making sure the agency runs effectively, efficiently, that we have the right people around the agency. And of course, as you know, you have very big shoes to fill. Your predecessor, Steve Van Rokel, who is now the U.S. Chief Information Officer, just did a fantastic job over the last 2 years. We're very pleased that you accepted the offer to come and take on this challenging role. Your experience at other agencies in the private sector makes you very well suited for this. We're very, very pleased to have you here. And so on behalf of all of my colleagues, welcome. And we see how hard you're working already, and we appreciate it. And let me regrettably take this opportunity to say goodbye on behalf of all of us to Danny Ornstein. So Danny, who's here, was literally the first person I recruited to come help with this responsibility. And Danny took the leap. He was in LA at the time with a great job at CBS and moved to DC, jumped into public service, and did it with just a wonderful spirit that I had the privilege to work with every day, and that touched so many people inside and outside the agency. Danny, from the day he started at the agency, has been a vital contributor to virtually every single thing we have accomplished in the period since he got here. And Danny, I've been fortunate in my life to work with a lot of talented people. You are one of the rare talents who has the ability to grasp the big picture, the strategic vision, and also the willingness to roll up your sleeves and work on the nitty-gritty details. I appreciate that very much. We all do. You've really helped make the commission run effectively, help make sure that we get big things done for the American people. I just have to say, you know, there's There's nothing that we've done over the last year that you thought was too small for you to get involved with, and there was nothing too complex or large that I thought was too big for you to get involved with, or others. I have to say that as someone who's, it's hard to believe, who's known you for over 20 years, some of you will think that's impossible chronologically, but it's true. I'm just, on a personal, just very, very proud of you, what you've accomplished so far, and it's just the beginning of what I know will be a fantastic career of making real contributions to our country. So thank you for your service. With that, Madam Secretary, if you could announce the date of the next FCC meeting.
The next agenda meeting of the Federal Communications Commission is Thursday, October 27th, 2011.
Thank you. We are adjourned.
Good morning, everybody. We'll do the same rules as before. Some new faces in the room today. We'll ask one question. We'll go right to left, and just introduce yourself and the media outlet that you're from.
Good. And listen, first of all, thank you all for coming. This is an important set of topics that we're doing today. Personally important to me. I very early in my career, as some of you know, I was trained as an emergency medical technician and worked on ambulances in Manhattan, which did lead me to becoming a lawyer and not that, but I developed a real appreciation for the role that communications plays in emergency response, and the focus that the Commission has had on this, Admiral Barnett and others. Very pleased with, and I just want to make sure you notice this, the joint work that we did with FEMA yesterday to release a coordinated set of tips and information for the public. We did see in the hurricane and other recent events that there is information that if we can get it into the hands of consumers can help them respond to emergencies, and the truth is we need your help and those of your colleagues to help get that information to the public, so I encourage you to take a look at that. But anyway, go ahead.
My name is Brendan Sasso. I'm with The Hill. So my question is about Light Squared. In the last couple weeks it's become very political. And some Republicans are accusing the FCC of granting the conditional waiver as part of some sort of political pressure. And Representative Turner said that you were trying to dodge congressional oversight when you didn't go to his hearing the other day. And so I wanted to get your thoughts on that.
Well, our process has been and will be fact-based, engineering-based, inclusive, involving all stakeholders. That's our obligation, that's what we've done, and that's what we'll continue to do.
Next.
Hi, Chairman Paul Barbagallo from BNA. On the issue of Universal Service Fund and intercarrier compensation reform, what are your hopes and expectations for bringing an order to a vote? Might October be the month? The leaves will still be on the trees, I guess, but they'll start to fall.
You know, it was cold a few days ago, and now it's warm, so I don't know. But I can tell you that USF and ICC reform is a real focus right now at the agency by the staff, by each of the commissioners, and including me. We all recognize an important need to finally transform and reform USF and intercarrier comp. I don't have anything to announce on schedule, but we're working very hard. We're in the home stretch, and I hope that we'll be able to deliver reform for the American consumer very soon.
Thank you, Chair.
Mr. Chairman, Paul Kirby with TR Daily. Do you have any plans for taking action to enforce the net neutrality rules, which are now scheduled to take effect shortly?
You know, the framework that we adopted last year has been accepted by the broadband economy. Companies have recognized for some time that it sets a framework that makes sense, and in fact that's why so many stakeholders throughout the broadband economy supported it and treat it as providing a framework that increases certainty and predictability in the space. When we adopted the framework, we said that we wanted to tackle the issues, reduce the uncertainty, and provide real incentives for private investment and innovation throughout the broadband economy. And I'm very pleased that in the last 10 months, that's what we've seen. Private investment and innovation is up, both at the edge, early and late stage technology companies, and also at the networks, wired and wireless infrastructure companies. So I'm very pleased with where we are with it, and, but we don't have any specific plans to take any steps.
I'll pass, thank you.
All right. Thank you all. Have a great day.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We'll now turn to part 2 of the press conference, the items on the agenda. We'll start with item 1, the NG 911 NPRM. Jamie Barnett, Chief of the Public Safety Bureau. We will talk about the studies after we finish the item itself, or the papers. Jamie? Any questions on the item? Oh. Paul?
I actually just have a question. I realize, and I'm sorry, this is Paul Barbagallo from BNA. I realize there are a number of cost studies being put forth, and I understand that the PSAPs are not a monolith. So, but in terms of just a general ballpark, I mean, what's the time frame we're looking for? You know, typically for a PSAP to fully equip to receive texts, to receive videos, and so on. I mean, are we talking about a 5-year span?
So the cost study was done for a 10-year expanse, because we realize it can't happen all at once. But I mean, Jennifer, you want to address the time period? Jennifer Manor, the Deputy Bureau Chief.
Yeah, could you just repeat? I just want to make sure I understood your question.
Just generally, and you know, with the understanding that there are different size PSAPs with different funding issues and in different geographic regions, but a typical PSAP, how long, based on your analysis, how long will it take for them to get up to speed to be a next gen PSAP and to receive data, video?
So let me clarify in the cost model. Our cost model only looked at network connectivity. So the costs of the connectivity from the PSAP to the carrier and call routing. So we didn't look at what it takes to do, what it takes in terms of upgrading the actual PSAP, or what it takes to upgrade the carrier's network to support this. So all I can talk to is the network connectivity side. And part of that depends, and is whether you have to do additional, you know, how far the PSAP is from broadband connectivity today, and if there has to be special construction. So it's really a case-by-case basis, and when there's funding available. But just because you get the network connectivity portion, which is what our model focused on, it doesn't mean that the PSAP's going to be capable. And so that's a big question. So it's a hard question to answer. Do you agree, Pat? Yeah.
Part of the study itself, we tried to analyze what we could analyze, the things that are at this stage boundable, and what my hope is, Paul, on that is that this is going to have the same type of effect that our cost model did for the public safety broadband network. Once the FCC produced its cost model on the broadband network, you immediately saw the Hill start to talk in terms of numbers. We hope that this will spur that kind of conversation across the federal policymakers and congressional leaders.
One clarification, there is a chart, and I don't remember, I'm sorry. One clarification, there is a chart in there, I don't remember which one it is, but if you look, there's a figure that maps what we assume, how the country will, it's actually figure 8 on ramp up, and so that should give you
kind of your timeline.
Time frame, similar to what we did in the public safety broadband network, which was about how long it'll take to build it out.
And we made these available to you as well?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
Anything else on the item or the cost study?
Yeah, it's about the cost study. I just want to make sure I understand it correctly. So it's only on the network connectivity issues. So does that affect wanting to upgrade to allow text messages, or is that only for are these costs really only for the being able to send photos and videos?
So it depends on the capacity that the PSAP has today. So we didn't do an analysis of a baseline of what's existing today. We actually did a cost model based on all PSAPs upgrading. So I don't know if David can answer what's available today.
Well, the only other thing I would say is that the bandwidth that's required to send text is actually relatively limited. You need the higher bandwidth in order to do photos and in particular video. That's really where the bandwidth requirements come in. But the cost study was designed with the notion that PSAPs would be implementing, needing the connectivity to support all of them, both text, photos, video, all of that. So the increased bandwidth that would be necessary for that.
We do have a rough estimate on how many have. We do have. I was just going to ask. We do have a rough estimate on how many PSAPs have broadband connectivity now, right? Broadly.
A NINA report. I don't have the.
Yeah. So NINA. I guess Brian Fonts has left, but they do have some percentage. I mean, when we started looking this, I guess the distressing thing is that somewhere around half don't have broadband connectivity. So that was one of the reasons why we looked at that particular part of it.
Okay. Go ahead, Brendan.
So the initial cost, the 1.23 billion, is for expanding the broadband. So what sort of costs are adding up to the recurring costs in order to do the next gen?
So if you look at our assumptions on Figure 9, and if you look actually in you can look actually starting on page 11 in the assumptions, and maybe this is that we can even do something longer and sit down, if that makes more sense to walk you through. And we have a summary of non-recurring costs also in Figure 7 and in Figure 3, and you'll see that includes bandwidth, connection, installation, dedicated network costs, equipment to refresh and replace equipment. But we're happy to sit down and walk you through the report as well if that's something you need more details on.
Thank you.
Okay. Paul Kirby.
But Jennifer and Jamie, you said you tried to measure the things you could, but it's just a sliver because there's past the broadband connectivity, there's all the other equipment that they would have to have, personnel, the training for those personnel. So you're like, we're just focusing on the things we can. I assume you don't want people to use those overall numbers for those two assumptions and say, well, this is what it would cost to get NG911 to America.
Not at all, and that's a good point and a significant. I wouldn't even call it caveat. We want to label it that way. This cost model is on what this cost model is on. We recognize that there are a host of resource issues for PSAPs, and that includes personnel, procedures for their handling of it, training, all of which are going to be bound up in this. But we do feel like this is an important first step because none of that becomes possible or even becomes a question unless they're connected.
Okay. And Brendan, let us know if you'd like somebody to, after all these events. All right. Do we have any questions on the white paper on the deployable aerial? Thank you. DACA. Any questions on the DACA white paper? Paul?
Jennifer, will you be actually flying on that balloon today as part of the demonstration?
I actually like to go faster, so I'll be in the UAV. That'll be too fast for you to even see.
I thought you were going to ask if I was going to blow it up with hot air, Paul.
I mean, that was stipulated.
Yeah, that's right. Okay.
All right, well, if there's no further questions, that concludes this press conference, and this concludes the agenda meeting. As we had said earlier, if the four of you would like to have now a tour of the technology demonstrations, we have representatives from public safety that are here to take you immediately outside for that tour. Thank you.